The point is, I was watching Nightline, and Koppel's over there, you know.
Yes.
Up on the front line.
Absolutely. He's the man. He's ready. He's ready to go.
To hear Ted Koppel talk to Peter Jennings, the disdain that Mr. Koppel has for Mr. Jennings is palpable. And, of course, there's no bigger horrific person on earth than Peter Jennings, unless, of course, it would be one of Saddam Hussein's sons. No, I'm just kidding about that.
Oh, my God.
I'm kidding.
Oh, my God.
But Peter Jennings is just pretty much well, he is what he is. Dreadful. He's dreadful. So. And I still love Brokaw, you know.
Oh, well, he's...
And I'll tell you what I do watch. I watch MSNBC. So I've tried everybody else, and at least for something like this, you know, their regular reporters, or most of them are horrible. But in doing this, they're just, because they've got all of the regular NBC people. David Bloom, I think, they're the best. I mean, they really are just providing the best coverage.
Head and shoulders.
So yeah. And of course, the great news yesterday is Mel Karmazin has re-signed with that deal. Didn't fall through, did it, overnight?
No, he's re-upped, and it's holding so far, man.
Mel Karmazin has re-upped at Viacom, and well, I'll just be honest with you. I'm being Howard are really, you know, Mel's pets, and I actually think he likes me better than Howard.
I think he does.
I mean, Howard, of course, gets a bigger raise than I do, but
yeah, but there's just
obviously,
you get a feeling.
I just get the feeling that Mel. Well, I know Mel likes me better, so I don't think I know that. So
the old Smothers brothers.
Yeah. Well, he does like me better. I mean, I can guarantee it.
Mom always liked you better.
So, well, that's great news, because
that is.
I mean, that doesn't get any better than that. And of course, you can imagine how I interpret that to. I already have a significant amount of power, and you can imagine now.
Oh,
it's just,
please.
Almost out of control, which I will be exercising some of it later today.
If you'll forgive me, nearly drunk with power.
Yeah. 11 minutes after the hour here on the Imus of the Morning program. Again, Ron and Santa, Senator Joe Lieberman, Tom Oliphant. And again, no whining from guests. So because I've got a short fuse for a number of reasons. Some things happening on the air, some off.
Yeah.
And so I'm not in a
lot of pressure on the air.
I'm not in a good mood.
No, he's not
at all. And
son of a bitch.
And
you just don't need that.
Yeah. So
don't need the aggravation.
Anyway, what else going on, sir?
The fate of Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein actually is still unknown, in spite of this announcement by the information minister, Ayman. There's still nothing definitive. The Washington Post is reporting that U.S. intelligence officials believe Saddam, possibly along with one or both of his sons, was in fact inside that compound in southern Baghdad when it was hit by the initial barrage. The report says the senior Bush administration officials say that intelligence analysts in Washington and in the Iraqi region were not certain whether Saddam was killed or injured or escaped. One senior administration official is quoted in the report as saying that the preponderance of evidence is he was there when the building blew up, end quote. Another top administration official told the Post there's evidence that Saddam was at least injured because of indications that medical help was urgently called for on Saddam's behalf. But countering that this morning, the Iraqi information minister saying, this, I'm paraphrasing him, but it was like, thank God they're all safe, meaning Saddam and whoever was with him at that point.
And who's this clown they're looking for in this country who's compared to Muhammad Atta or whatever?
This 27-year-old, I don't have his name right in front of me, and I would have to have it.
Okay. Okay.
But he's most recently known to have been in Florida, was believed to have perhaps been planning an attack on the nuclear power facility, the one in Palo Verde, Nevada, or Arizona.
Well, the big one's in Arizona.
Arizona, I beg your pardon, misspoke myself. And that is all that is known.
Idiot.
At this moment.
14 after the hour.
American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
right, folks, while we have a minute, let's go up to the chopper with...
Of course, Mike Francesa was on yesterday, the sports doctor, announcing his Final Four selections, and I forget what they were. Do you remember what they were?
No, absolutely, every single one.
What were they?
One, he had Memphis. The other, he had UConn.
Right.
Memphis.
He had Kentucky.
Right.
And I must say, I don't remember the fourth.
Well, then you don't remember.
No, I don't.
You just said you did.
I only remember the ones that he lost on.
Really?
Because I was so happy last night.
Why?
When Memphis lost.
What's wrong with you?
Oh, that's awful.
You're a
terrible attitude.
Did you ever find that tape, Lou?
I got it.
Oh, let me hear this.
I couldn't decide between two teams in the West, which is loaded with a who's who. You have Arizona, Kansas, you have Duke, you have Illinois, all top, major programs.
Right.
I'm picking Memphis to make the Final Four.
Wow.
Really?
So Kentucky, Memphis, Oklahoma, and UConn in the Final Four.
Well, let me just point out, of course, that
Good job, Mikey.
Memphis is no longer in the tournament. Once again, about 4 hours after he made that statement, Memphis has gone home for the spring.
Well, Arizona State beat them. I actually, in my kid, I had Arizona State beating Memphis.
Yes, you did. You had Arizona State
Of course,
winning.
I lost a bunch of other games, but
Well, that's okay.
I still have all of my teams
Your Final Four is intact.
till today. Then I'll lose 2 today.
Manhattan
Manhattan and Xavier, I'll go down today. But I'm, but I don't,
Yeah, but then again, you didn't break into my show yesterday for an hour.
No, but I thought that was a gutsy pick on Mike's part, didn't you,
Yes,
think?
very
Yeah.
gutsy.
Which pick?
It's good if you want to lose. It's a gutsy pick.
What, the Memphis pick?
The Memphis pick,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yes, it was.
but sometimes people will confuse gutsy with stupidity.
You know, how are you going to face Mike today?
With me?
Yeah.
What?
You don't think he's up, do you? I guarantee he's up.
You think he's up right now?
Oh, I
Listening
told you, no, I would bet a house on it. Yeah,
Now, if he won-
or a car.
if he won all of his games last night, would he be listening this morning? He was terrified when Memphis lost last night that would be the topic first thing this morning on this program, wasn't he? You're right. He's up right now listening to the show.
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't even have noticed, of course.
If I hadn't called you at home last night?
Well, fortunately, you don't have my phone number. But, no, if you hadn't have been jumping up and down when I walked in this morning,
This is the greatest day of my life. This is even better than the UConn women losing to Villanova.
well,
That's 2 weeks in a row I'm the happiest guy in the world.
yeah.
What if Francesa tells you that he has Springsteen tickets for you? How are you going to feel?
Yeah.
Well, then, listen, he made, it was a gutsy call. It didn't work out. That's it.
We all make mistakes.
23 after the hour. Here's Janice Dean with the Scum Report, sponsored by Oral-B, 3D XL, a toothbrush that will do about everything. So, what's going on, Janice?
Following the lead of Saddam Hussein, more stars are getting body doubles these days. Shakira, Britney Spears, Michael Jackson, and now Eminem are all said to have them supposedly so that the stand-in, not the star, will be kidnapped. The Marshall Mathers double apparently looks identical to an Eminem, just a little shorter and younger. He's not fully Eminem, so that's why they call him partial. Thinking maybe Sid might want to try a body double at some
Who
point.
would I be? Who would my star be?
I don't know. Who
How'd you think
looks
about
like you?
Nobody.
Tom Cruise, a little bit, I think.
Actor Will Smith has changed his mind about being a presenter at the upcoming Academy Awards. This is going to be Smith's fourth appearance.
What's the letter in the alphabet before him, Charles? L?
Yeah.
Maybe I should call him L. Go ahead, Janice, I'm sorry.
Will Smith has changed his mind, and this was to be Smith's fourth appearance at the as an Oscar presenter. In a statement, Smith's spokesperson says, quote, he felt it would be inappropriate given the situation in the world today for him to be there.
Right.
And finally, a little joke for you. Where does Saddam Hussein keep his CDs?
Uh-oh. I don't know.
In Iraq!
Oh, my God.
Get the hell out of the studio,
Please.
Janice, you moron. You're suspended. It's coming up on 25 after the hour. Any other big upsets in the NCAA
No,
tournament?
there really weren't yesterday. It was, other than Central Michigan, of course.
I
was-
say the Arizona State
11.
Memphis wasn't a big upset.
No,
Arizona State a 10 seed, Memphis a 7.
Right, we had an 11 beat a 6 last night.
The
Central
Tulsa-
Michigan.
Tulsa
What was the 11 beat the 6?
Central Michigan beat Creighton. And
Yeah,
we had,
I had that.
you had that,
Yeah.
and we had a 13 beat a 4 with the Tulsa victory over Dayton last night.
I had Tulsa over Dayton.
Oh, you had all 3 of those?
Yes.
Well, why don't you do the show from 11 to 12 today instead of Mike?
Absolutely.
Well, no, because there are a bunch of others I lost. I had BYU over Connecticut.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I have UConn going to the Final Four, so.
And a couple others I lost.
Yeah. But I don't think today you'll lose both your picks. I think you'll lose Manhattan today, but I think
Sure.
Xavier will certainly win today.
Right. Well,
But only one upset from a 13 and a 4. No bigger upsets than that yesterday.
okay. 25. Anything else going on?
Well, the French Canadians last night, the Islanders played the Montreal Canadiens, and these bastards up in French Canada last night booed the national anthem. So if you're a hockey team right now and you got to play a game, you shouldn't go. You shouldn't even go. Am I right about that? What's more important right now, a hockey game or the patriotism of this country? You should not even go to these games anymore. They should boycott the Montreal Canadiens from the National Hockey League.
That is disgraceful.
And they had just called, had they not, for a show of support and solidarity.
Yes, exactly.
And as both anthems played, and then as the national anthem played of the United States, they
booed loudly.
That is
horrible.
So,
well, there's another reason to fire Janice. 26 after the hour.
That sound of those Yankee big bats means it's springtime.
Radio station here in New York City.com, and we have this. Jesus, I-Man, poor Dan Rather must be heartbroken. His latest girlfriend, Saddam, lied to him about setting the oil fields on fire. Imus, we're desperate here in Boston. 200 Harvard kids after he left class yesterday to protest the war. Dear God in heaven, what are we going to do? Well, let's try to
protest quickly.
Well,
all I can say.
Here is now from CNBC, our financial guy, Ron and Santa. Good morning, Mr. Santa.
Good morning, Mr. Imus.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Pretty good news about Mel, huh?
Very good news. 3 years, and looks like he and Mr. Redstone have worked something out.
So do you think you're better than Mike Breen? And the appropriate response would be, no, I realize I'm not.
Certainly.
But his response is, I think I'm different.
What do you do with a guy like that? Who's that troubled of an individual?
Suspend him and fine him a week's pay.
Guantanamo Bay.
Holy cow.
And there's somebody who is so far removed from any sense of reality that is shocking.
Imus in the morning.
Hi, Mike.
Sid has an absolute death wish. Breen will go out of his way to kill him. I mean, Sid, Don will not protect you because I'll get you when the old bastard isn't looking.
Sports Radio 66, WFAU.
It's 19 to the hour. Mohegan Sun giving you a chance to win your share of 300. Opposed the whole idea of this, where you could just sense how disappointed they were on the first night of bombing that they didn't have a big fireworks show to telecast,
Yeah.
Not enough stuff blew up for them,
That's right.
You could just, you really could. You could actually hear the disappointment in their voices that they were just
Not good.
Well, where's the shock and awe deal?
Doggone it.
Well, what happened to that? Wow, the lights are still on. How come they're not out? I mean, actually heard somebody say that. Well, the lights are still on. I mean, why is that? The Emerson Morning Business Report, sponsored by the New York Stock Exchange. Today at the Exchange, Sergeant Major of the Army Jack Tilley will ring the opening bell. Monday, Time Magazine President Eileen Naughton will ring the opening bell to celebrate the 80th anniversary of Time Magazine. AOL Time Warner trades under the ticker symbol AOL. Wall Street's most familiar market index now owns a 7-session winning streak, and according to Ron and Santa, who we spoke with in a testy conversation earlier this morning, is poised for an 8th up day, at least if the futures serve as any sort of prediction.
Mm-hmm.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 20, which Mr. Insana, of course, at one point told us they didn't necessarily. And this morning, of course, he said they did. And
well, they're up substantially.
So just another example of
come on, Ron.
Mr. Insana talking out of both sides of his fat little mouth. Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 21 points, finished at 8,286. NASDAQ Composite Index gained nearly 6 points. S&P 500 rose almost 2 points. New York Stock Exchange Composite closed at 56.44, up 1107. Wall Street applauding Viacom for keeping Mel Karmazin on board as its president for 3 more years.
Yep.
The deal sent Viacom shares jumping 5% and earned, by the way, Mr. Karmazin a tidy $8.4 million on his personal Viacom stake, and it does call a truce to a feud between Karmazin and his boss, Sumner Redstone, which I don't believe ever existed, but whatever. The new pay packs please a lot of investors because they leave open a door for Mr. Karmazin to take over when Mr. Redstone steps down after he turns 80 this year. The two executives have made headlines for more than a year with their spats over both management style and and decisions affecting the media empire, which includes, of course, CBS, Paramount Studios, MTV, and Simon & Schuster. Both will annually receive a base salary of $1 million, plus an added $2.99 million in deferred compensation, with annual raises up to 10%, which is significant, considering that the average raise for Viacom employees is somewhere between 2 and 3%. Mm-hmm. And those incidentally have been frozen till October. What else going on? According to the New York Post this morning, the nearly worthless currency of Saddam Hussein's regime, the dinar, is selling at flea markets at thousands of times its face value because all Iraqi currency bears Saddam's likeness over such color illustrations as satellite dishes and fancy Islamic minarets. Since the war started, the dinar has lost most of its value in Iraq, really, with a penny buying about 40 dinars. People are apparently buying them and putting the currency up in bars and game rooms for darts. And more news from the New York Post. Martha Stewart shelling out thousands of dollars in legal fees for her friend Maria Pasternak. This is a woman who was apparently traveling with her to Mexico December 27th.
Oh, yeah.
When old Martha was making those frantic phone calls from her jet, trying to unload the M-clone stock, and apparently Miss Pasternak was going to, well, she was, the unfortunate C word, she was cooperating with the government. Now Martha apparently is going to fork over the rather substantial legal fees to try to get her to shut her mouth. And frankly, not to talk about stuff that's none of her damn business.
There you go.
Leave poor old Martha alone.
Yes, darn it.
Well, that's the business report, sponsored by the New York Stock Exchange, Senator Joe Lieberman, and then Tom Oliphant, plus all of the regular reporters from around the world covering the war in Iraq, all coming up on this Imus Morning program. It is a quarter after the hour.
The people of the United States and their friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder. We will meet that threat now with our Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines, so that we do not have to meet it later with armies of firefighters and police and doctors on the streets of our cities.
Imus in the morning.
Allergy sufferers looking for non-drowsy relief at the right price? Look no further.
Yep. And two, she had about the lamest joke that I've almost ever heard.
Oh,
Double
come
reasons.
on.
Just
You can tell
lame,
why it's that
lame
joke.
and not funny. Anyway, the Montreal Canadiens hockey team, their fans, during a hockey before the hockey game last night when they played the national anthems, the fans booed the South Spangled Banners.
That's right.
I'd like to apologize on behalf of my
Well, your
fellow
apology is
Canadians.
not accepted. So.
But Habs fans are ridiculous anyway.
Yeah. At any rate, and Sid Rosenberg's here, and Sid, all of your teams are still alive, and
All four of my clubs are still alive.
what clubs do you have now?
I've got Kentucky, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Yukon.
What teams do you have, Chuck?
Kentucky, Oklahoma, Illinois, Florida.
4 for 4.
Okay, what teams do you have, Lou?
I have to think now. I
Okay.
have Xavier. I
Right.
have Kentucky.
You have Xavier going to the Final Four?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Arizona.
Hmm?
And I forget the fourth team now.
Was it Memphis?
no, it wasn't Memphis.
No one?
No, they're out.
Okay, how about you, Bernie? What's your Final Four?
I can't recall.
Oh,
I
come
think
on
one of them
here.
is Troy State, so. But they haven't been eliminated yet.
My Final Four, Manhattan, Xavier.
Yep.
Some other team in Illinois. I think probably Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kentucky,
Right.
yeah.
So you're 4 for 4, right?
Yeah, I've got Xavier winning the national championship,
That's okay.
incidentally.
Well, right now.
But Mike Francesa has Xavier going to the Final Eight, so I was pretty impressed with that.
Yeah, well, that's the guy to go with, sure.
Sure. well, what is that supposed to mean?
No, it's just funny how everybody in the studio is 4 for 4.
Right.
And
A couple of my teams haven't played yet.
well, that's okay.
So I won't be 4 for 4 tomorrow.
Well, we'll talk about that tomorrole. But as of right now,
We'll
we're
see.
all 4 for 4.
On whose show will we talk about that on Saturday?
Oh, I'll come in just to talk about it.
Oh, sure. Right.
But there is a certain individual who no longer is 4 for 4.
And you're going to rub it in his face.
No, I am not.
I'm
No,
sure a lot
no.
of people are not 4 for 4, but we don't need to dwell on that.
No.
So let's do.
I wonder if a lot of those people will be showing up at about 10:45 this morning to spend an hour on these airways talking about today's action. You think they will?
Who?
Oh, I don't know. Anybody who may have picked the team that lost yesterday.
No, I don't know. I just don't think we need to go into that. Let's let's just get to sports and drop it.
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
I just think that when we take a good look at the situation, there's no reason to put an hour pregame show on, especially when somebody picks a team that has already lost on the first day of action.
Oh, nobody.
And Creighton was supposed to
nobody would do that.
And Holy Cross was supposed to do well in this tournament.
Quit making stuff up.
Yeah, nobody would do that. Who would do that?
Mike.
Wait a minute. And so you're going to be asking Mike for tickets probably soon, and he's not going to give them to you.
I need tickets for La Boheme, too, on top of Bruce Springsteen now also.
Oh, well, forget about it.
La Boheme. You're going to La Boheme.
You're last on the list.
It's like Mike Tyson going to the opera. La Boheme.
La Boheme.
Yeah, you really are just a jerk.
What are they giving away that night?
How can you pretend to be a friend of Francesca's?
Right, when you're doing this.
And then when you're trying to do this.
No, I am a friend of Mike's.
And then Francesca accuses me of encouraging you guys, which I would like to point out is not the case.
No, well, that's ridiculous.
No. So
That really is. That's,
No, that is
What are you, fanning yourself with your hand there? What are you doing? That's exactly what he's doing.
I'm so happy I'm not on TV. Mike can't see me.
Is that hot in the studio?
I saw you this morning, Don.
No, on a serious note, he obviously, Mike Francesa picked Kentucky to win the national championship. He picked Memphis just as to do something different.
Yeah.
Straight as out.
So if he's 1/4 wrong, so what?
Well, I don't think it makes any difference.
Yeah,
No.
none.
How does it not make any difference?
Well, because he's picked Kentucky to win the national championship.
Yeah, but his Final Four, I mean, everybody looks at, what's your final, what was your question? What's your Final Four? What's your Final Four?
After
What's
day
your Final
one,
Four?
day one.
At this point, yeah.
Yeah, well.
Well, everybody loses a few teams as you
Okay,
get
what's your
closer
Final
to
Four?
it.
Sid, what's your Final Four? What's your Final Three, Mike? That's not good.
As of today.
That's not good.
Can I help Janice out with a better Iraqi joke? You know why Iraqi men don't get circumcised? Why
No.
that? So they have a place to hide their bubble gum in a sandstorm? Remember that from 12 years ago?
I think mine's better.
That was really hilarious.
Let's have an Iraqi joke off.
It's like
my
a joke
gosh.
off, Mikey.
What else going on?
It took 20 minutes for a jury to convict the Long Island creep who took part in a threesome on an LIRR train.
yeah.
Just to recap the story, Green joined his brother Lyle and Lyle's wife Francine on an X-rated romp to Long Island during an early morning tour on the LIRR in September. Authorities say Green was having intercourse with Francine while she was performing oral sex on her husband.
Yeah, really?
The conductor warned the sex trio to stop, but they would not. Claiming that he may have inadvertently touched his sister-in-law, Green says he was the odd man out among the rail riders. He did, however, admit to downing at least 8 beers, 3 rum and cokes, 4 shots of tequila, and quite a few espressos with Sambuca during the booze spree.
Oh,
See? And I take the D-train and get some toothless guy playing My Funny Valentine.
I couldn't decide between two teams in the West, which is loaded with a who's who. You have Arizona, Kansas, you have Duke, you have Illinois, all top, major programs.
Right.
I'm picking Memphis to make the Final Four.
Wow.
Really?
So Kentucky, Memphis, Oklahoma, and UConn in the Final Four.
Senator Joe Lieberman is next. 26 out of the hour.
Lending success story from...
But I do know one and one is 2. And if this one could be with you, what a wonderful world this would be. Now, I don't claim to be an A student, but I'm trying to be. For maybe by being an A student, baby, I can win your love for me. Don't know much about history. Don't know much biology. Don't know much about a science book. Don't know much about the French I took. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be. La ta 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 ta. History. biology. Well, science book. French art too. Yeah, but I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be. There is a rose in Spanish Harlem, a red rose up in Spanish Harlem. It is a special one, it's never seen the sun. It only comes out when the moon is on the run and all the stars are gleaming. It's growing in the street right up through the concrete, but soft and
To bring us up to speed on everything we know about the war to this point. Good morning, Charles.
Morning, I-Man. The American-led coalition faced its most difficult day yet in Operation Iraqi Freedom yesterday, with victories and setbacks, including the death or capture of up to 21 U.S. soldiers. The optimism that had characterized the relatively smooth first few days was tempered with news of the capture of these first American prisoners of war and casualties during fighting at the southern Iraqi city of Nasiriyah. Up to 9 Marines were killed during 2 fights as troops were securing that town's bridges. The Allied troops encountered stiff Iraqi resistance. The Iraqis used ambushes and even fake surrenders to kill and capture American troops. In an ambush on an Army supply convoy, 12 American soldiers were missing and presumed captured. 5 American troops, including a woman, were taken prisoners of war and were shown being interrogated on the Arab satellite station Al Jazeera. The International Committee of the Red Cross reminds all parties to the war that they are obligated under international humanitarian law not to do that, not to allow pictures of prisoners to be broadcast. 5 days into the war, troops are less than 100 miles from arriving in Baghdad. And when they do, forces will face the elite Republican Guard, Saddam's most loyal troops, and the possibility, they are saying, of chemical weapons will increase at that point. Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein was shown on Iraqi television praising the efforts of his military in the war.
Not live, though.
Not live, but it is not clear where or when this 20-minute speech was recorded. But the fact that Saddam did mention successes in Qasr and other battles suggested it had been made in the last day or two. The British are saying, British Defense Minister Jeff Hoon said of today's appearance by Saddam Hussein that it was not live, he noted, and as he put it, it does need more analysis before they can make any real determination. Saddam, though, was seen saying that Iraqi forces had inflicted serious losses. Unlike the broadcast speech of last week, he was not wearing glasses and was not wearing a military beret, but he appeared, other than that, to be in full uniform. In the most notable gain for the coalition, soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division's 2nd Brigade moved 230 miles in 40 hours. Allied forces captured Basra's airport. Commanders say they are in no rush to move into the city itself, hoping instead that Iraqi defenders decide to give up there. American forces pressed to find the first cache of chemical and biological weapons and seized a suspected chemical factory in Najaf, southern Iraq, checking other sites based on leads from captured Iraqis and documents. There was some more resistance in the southern Iraq city of Qasr, where sporadic fighting continued days after the Allies had taken effective control there. A British warplane was shot down in a friendly fire attack as it returned from a night patrol to Kuwait. It was shot down by American Patriot missiles, and its crew of 2 died. American forces of the 3rd Infantry Division captured an installation apparently used to produce chemical weapons, though they're still working on that. They are sending in mobile labs technicians to try to determine exactly what sort of chemicals were being developed there, if they were weapons or otherwise. An American soldier was being held in this grenade attack at an Army base in Kuwait. The suspect is reportedly a Muslim American who had recently been reprimanded for insubordination. The attack at the 101st Airborne Division's command center, where the assailant threw grenades into 3 tents, 3 of the wounded were seriously injured, and Captain Christopher Scott Siebert, 27 years old, died. A British television news reporter who disappeared in southern Iraq was believed dead. ITN Television said its reporter Terry Lloyd and 2 colleagues apparently were caught in a barrage of friendly fire on Saturday, and hundreds of police and security agents, perhaps saw some of this footage, searched for a possibly downed coalition pilot, firing into the reeds and setting reeds on fire.
I did say that, yeah.
In shallow water alongside Baghdad's Tigris River. And that's a summation, man, of where we stand at the moment.
It's 5 minutes till the hour. We have about 40 seconds for you, Sid.
Want to give me? I'll give you quickly the Sweet 16. What you have going on Thursday and Friday, man. In the Midwest, you've got Kentucky taking on Wisconsin. You've got Marquette taking on Pittsburgh. Out west, Arizona taking on Notre Dame. Duke taking on Kansas. In the East, it's Oklahoma taking on Butler, the big surprise, and Syracuse taking on Auburn. And in the South, man, Texas taking on UConn, Maryland taking on Michigan State, as all 4 number 1 seeds are still alive as we go to the Sweet 16 on Thursday and Friday.
Okay, Rangers are dead. Tiger Woods won a golf tournament, and Kurt Busch won the NASCAR car race. Is that right?
All 3 of those things are exactly right.
And you must be happy Roman Polanski won his Best Director at the Academy Awards.
Yeah, I was. I was hoping for that all night last night.
It's coming up on 4 minutes. What'll be for you? Come on 4 minutes away.
Imus in the morning.
Ah, winter. It's a season of migration. The geese fly.
Father just backs off a little bit.
Nickel for the Oracle Fan Highway Patrol.
It is 13 till the hour here on the Imus in the Morning program. And time for a little sports, and with that, Sid Rosenberg. Good morning, Sid.
Morning, man.
What's Chris and Mike been doing?
Oh, college basketball.
Oh, okay.
Oh, loads of it. Good stuff.
Yeah.
And
what's going on?
By the way, if you were hoping that sports would provide a diversion from the war coverage over the weekend, not going to be the case on TV. Ratings for the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament down 24% from last year. That last day, Tiger Woods trying to win the Bay Hill Classic, down 32% from last year. Even the NASCAR race was down 9% from last year. Only one sport this weekend was up from last year. Arena football, up 36%.
Really? Holy cow.
Is that unbelievable?
Yeah, you got skunk hunting on cable news. Who needs sports?
Also, a little wild scene at the Garden last night, man. I know that the Knicks are not the team of choice for the show, but believe it or not, they're only 2.5 games now out of the last playoff spot in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
At one point last night, late in the Knicks went over Toronto.
You know, that is really sad that you guys, plot the progress of your team, both the Rangers and these morons, and even the other teams, by how many places they are out of making the playoffs as opposed to being in first place, which you would seem to would be the goal.
Yeah, but that's so far away. It's so unrealistic. You can't even talk about
it. Then I would just drop it, because getting in the playoffs is
ridiculous.
Pointless. Because they're out in the first round. I mean, it's just the whole thing is just. But go ahead.
But don't forget, man, that years ago, back in '99, when the Knicks made the finals, they were the 8th seed in the playoffs and went all the way to the finals against San Antonio.
Well, that was.
Well, of course it was different. I'm not saying the Knicks are any good, but last night anyway at the Garden, at one point, Latrell Sprewell was about to inbound the basketball at the end of the game, and all of a sudden, Calvin Klein, he looks all whacked out, runs up to Latrell Sprewell, or stumbles up to Latrell Sprewell, I should say, grabs his arm on the court, and starts mumbling stuff in Latrell Sprewell's ear as he's trying to inbound the basketball at the game last night. Security came about 2 minutes later and ushered Calvin Klein back to his seat. But you could just imagine what Calvin Klein must have been saying to Latrell Sprewell with a minute left in the game. They had to run up to him on the court and say something in his ear.
Well, clearly he wants to go strong to his hole.
What?
Why didn't they throw him out of the building like they would have you and me?
Yeah.
Well, he's Calvin Klein.
There you go.
I mean, come on.
There you go. Not only throw him out, beat the hell out of him on the way out, like they would have you or I.
Well, didn't anybody ask Mr. Sprewell what he said?
They did ask Sprewell what he said after the game, and Latrell decided he wasn't going to tell anybody.
Huh.
Maybe it was something like what Bernie just said.
What else could it be? Drunken old pedophile, gay pedophile? What else is he going to say?
How,
you tell us.
What evidence do we have that he's a pedophile, Bernard?
Oh, have you ever seen his ads?
Yeah, I've seen his ads, but...
they're a bunch of 13-year-old girls and boys.
He's true, when he sues you and me...
Underwear half off.
If he sues me...
Alleged pedophile.
Better. It's a little bit better. I mean,
Well, he's been. Those accusations have been out there regarding his ads. Yeah, no question.
I understand about his ads, but accusing him of being a pedophile is probably not an area we want to get into. At least I don't want to have to deal with it.
With his smoke, there's
a bald-headed idiot. They're not going to sue you; they'll sue me.
Drunken old pedophile, one defending the other.
Well, you're an asshole.
Oh, man.
Well, no, I'm not in the mood for this. It's not being an idiot. Go ahead, sir.
11 football players selected yesterday to the College Football Hall of Fame, including Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann, who actually had a pretty good record at Notre Dame back in the 70s, man. He was 25-4, and he did finish second to Jim Plunkett for the Heisman back in 1970. And looks like Joe Theismann will go into the College Football Hall of Fame, which I guess is good news for Joe, because I don't think the Pro Football Hall of Fame is going to be calling Joe Theismann anytime soon.
Well.
And how about Randy Johnson yesterday, huh? Signed a 2-year contract extension, $33 million, man. 39 years old, and he got a $33 million contract extension.
Only in America.
Living right. He can still get people out.
Oh, not only that, man, you're right. Last year he won his 4th consecutive Cy Young Award, making him only the 2nd pitcher ever to do that in the history of the game, which like the other guy who did it.
He's an automatic Hall of Fame guy.
Oh, automatic.
Yeah.
Like I said, only the 2nd guy to ever win 4 straight Cy Young Awards. The other guy? Wish I knew.
Probably Steve Carlton or something like that?
That's a good guess. It is going to be Steve Carlton. How'd you know that?
I don't know. I just guessed.
Yeah, it's a pretty good guess. It's a good job.
Damn good guess.
Tremendous job out of you.
Shut up, Bernard. God, I'm going to come in there and jab you right in your ear. All right, go ahead.
That'll be a switch.
And the Hernandez brothers are back.
Yeah, you'd like me to jab you in the butt. Come on here.
And the Hernandez brothers are back together in Montreal. This is very, very good news. The Giants yesterday traded Livan Hernandez to Montreal, so now he can pitch, I should say, with his brother El Duque, who's also on the Montreal Expos. That's a nice little, I want to end a nice, warm family story for you there, man. Don't you feel all warm?
Put them both on an inner tube and send them back? Or?
That's nice.
Probably not. I don't really mean that, of course.
Come on. A fan in a sail. Get the hell out of here. Oh, Father.
What's the matter, Charles?
Well, I just don't think that was necessary, man.
No, it wasn't. I just, well, Bernard got me started down that road, and now,
come
it's
back.
just,
Do a Huey. Come back.
All right. What else, Sid?
That's all for this hour, but don't worry, next hour we got so much more you're not going to believe it.
Oh, gee, that's great.
I can tell the Ironman.
Keep it where it is. 7 minutes till the hour now. Here on the Imus in the Morning program.
Once upon a time you dressed so fine, do the bump of dime in your prime. Then people call, say beware doll, you're bound to fall, you thought they were all. Didn't you used to laugh about everybody that was hanging out. Now you don't talk so loud. Now you don't seem so proud about having to be scrounging your next meal. How does it feel? How does it feel to be without a home? Like a complete unknown. Like Imus in the morning.
How have you been? Great.
Take breath, find a nest in the hill, chill like Flint, buy an old drop top, find a box of pills, and I'm a kid, rock it up and down your block, with a bottle of scotch and watch lots of crotch, buy a yacht with a flag saying chillin' the most, then rock that bitch up and down the coast, give a toast to the sun, drink with the stars, get thrown in the mix, tossed out of bars, Mr. Tijuana, I wanna roam by no town, telling fools to come back home, start an escort service for all the right reasons, and set up shop at the top of 4 seasons, kid rockin' up the real McCoy, and I'm headed out west, because I wanna be a cowboy, baby, with a top left back and the sunshine shining, cowboy, baby, so sitting with the moon, I wanna be a cowboy, baby, ride that night for my sleep. morning. Cowboys, baby. I can still see from a mile away. Cowboys. Out of wood and running. Imus in the morning.
One of my favorite country songs. This is WFAN in New York and Infinity Broadcasting Radio Station, part of the Viacom deal. Time for a local news. Here with that is Charles McCord. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, I-Man. Federal legislation has been unveiled that would allocate $15 billion.
Gone back to John Siegenthaler for some reason. Now they've gone to David Bloom. Want to hear what he's got to say?
Yeah, what is he talking about?
Let's hear David Bloom.
That doesn't really affect the heavy weight, if you will, of this armored division, the tanks and the Bradleys. I mean, they can certainly still fight in this kind of weather, but it does have an impact on a couple things. Number one, it impacts their air cover. Certainly the Apache attack helicopters do not want to be flying in this kind of weather. They can become easily downed, not by the anti-aircraft guns, but just by the sand sticking in the machinery and downing them. Number two, I'm going to ask Craig to pan over here, and you can see that they're trying to repair the engine of a Bradley over here. Certainly it takes a toll on the machinery, and it also makes it much more difficult for the mechanics to actually repair the equipment. I mean, it's just that much harder trying to fix a piece of machinery when you've got the engine out and sand is blowing all over it and sticking to it. Number three, it affects the supply lines, because keep in mind, I mean, we're talking about getting supplied by forces that are still in Kuwait, hundreds of miles away from us now, so it takes those vehicles longer to get up here. So we're running a little bit low, not critically low, but a little bit low on things like fuel, which is especially important. I mean, the Abrams get about a half a mile to the gallon when they're moving across the battlefield, but also in terms of food, the MREs, and water. As I say, not critically low, but they're concerned a little bit about the supply lines.
John, David, you were on the move last night.
A little of John Siegenthaler talking to David Bloom David standing in the middle of a sandstorm in Iraq, not Siegenthaler. He's, of course, in the studio. It is, or he should be. It's coming up on 10 minutes after the hour. Here's more now from Charles McCord. Charles?
As we said, the British have declared parts of the southern Iraqi city of Basra military targets as they continue to meet resistance there, I-Man. And on to the north in Al-Nasiriyah, U.S. Marines have made their way across the Euphrates River now after what's described as a fierce street battle in Nasiriyah. The progress opens up a new line of advance toward Baghdad, though. The Marines used a 2-mile line of armored vehicles, and the convoy sped through the streets under cover of helicopter rockets amid artillery, tank, and machine gun fire. The Allies have, for the most part, gone around cities, such as back in Basra, in their march to Baghdad, but they had to go through Nasiriyah in order to cross those two key bridges. At least 30 Iraqis have been killed near Nasiriyah in what reporters say appeared to be an Allied bombing strike. Witnesses counted bodies near a destroyed bus about 12 miles north of the city, some taken prisoners there, and some of them were reportedly wearing the black clothes of Iraqi irregular forces. Top Iraqi officials are again saying their forces have inflicted casualties on the coalition forces. Information Minister Mohammed al-Sahaf says 8 enemy soldiers have been killed in a battle near a bridge in central Iraq. And there is information from USA Today this morning, I-Man, regarding Saddam Hussein. The story is that CIA operatives and Army commandos hunting for Saddam believe that he still could be in Baghdad, in fact, in a bunker, receiving medical attention from military doctors. That from U.S. intelligence and military sources quoted by USA Today.
Well, I could tell you that. I mean, I could speculate that.
About the U.S. intelligence?
No, that he was in a bunker someplace receiving medical attention.
Oh, certainly. The assessment came on a day in which...
Let's find a son of a bitch.
I know. Well, here's the problem. Publicly, U.S. officials, according to USA Today, say they aren't sure whether Saddam is alive, but air attacks in Baghdad and elsewhere continue to make his residences and command centers a priority, suggesting an assumption that he is alive. And intelligence said that intercepted communications captured Iraqi generals, spy satellites, and aircraft captured by them are being used to try to track him, but it's difficult because he can move from bunker to bunker, all underground, via tunnels that he has constructed in Baghdad specifically for that purpose. But further suggestion this morning that he was indeed at least wounded in that initial attack.
12 minutes after the hour here on the Imus Morning program, the business report sponsored by the New York Stock Exchange. Today at the exchange, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Mel Martinez and President of the Government National Mortgage Association, the Honorable Ronald Rosenfeld, will ring the opening bell. On Wednesday, National Association of Investors Corporation Chairman Ken Janke and President and CEO Dick Holthouse will ring the opening bell to mark its 50th anniversary. Wall Street coming off its biggest losses of the year, with many investors realizing that the war in Iraq may not go as quickly as they had hoped. The Dow Industrials plunged 307 points yesterday. Of course, it had gone up around 1,100 in the past few days, but to close at 82. Now 14 NASDAQ Composite.
Oh, being bitches. Oh, my God. Wearing Piazza's jersey?
You're going to wear Piazza's jersey to the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're a grown man, Sid.
Yeah, but it's
You're not 12 years old.
To a half dozen divisions that are controlled by Saddam's younger son, Kuzai, and Fedayeen Saddam that means Men of Sacrifice. Saddam's Men of Sacrifice that was formed in 1995 by Saddam's elder son, Uday, which is considered a very politically reliable force, almost fanatically aligned with Saddam Hussein, and it's a group of 30,000 to 40,000 young men based in Baghdad that reports directly to the presidential palace rather than through the army chain of command.
Now, if we bombed all those palaces, well, I guess they have to try to figure out where he is and report to him, right?
Yes.
As a matter of fact. All right, thank you, Charles. 21 now till the hour.
Hey, Imus in the morning.
The difference between a BMW and any other vehicle on the road. And real estate?
Your car to Heritage for the Blind. Call 1-800-2-DONATE for hassle-free pickup. Remember 1-800-2-DONATE or visit taxdeduction.com. I'm Lori McNichol for the Oracle Fan Highway Patrol.
Now, the general's just been asked a question about how he thinks the media is covering this, how it's working. Let's
Most of our societies, free societies, have the media, and we allow it to report. We may not always agree with what the report is. I think that's the case in any nation. In terms of bringing the media onto the battlefield, I think this has been really an historic event. Certainly during World War II, we had some great media reporters, Ernie Piles and those kinds of folks who did wonderful work out on the battlefield describing the fight. But it took 6 months for their stories to get back in press. The challenge we have is the immediacy that the media has to report. And because of that capability, sometimes the report is taking just in the very narrow frame that it's seen, and so we have to understand that. But I don't think that the media has had an adverse effect. I think most of the commanders who have embedded correspondents out there with them are very comfortable.
Game 7-10 from Minneapolis on Thursday night features Kentucky taking on Wisconsin. That's out of the Midwest bracket. And also out of Anaheim on Thursday night, a 7:30 start. That'll feature
these Eastern times? Or?
These are all Eastern times, exactly. Okay. The number 1 seed Arizona will take on Notre Dame. That's out of the West bracket. And the 2 early games on Friday include the 7:10 p.m. Eastern time early start. Oklahoma taking on Butler. Oklahoma, the 1 seed, that's out of the East bracket. And finally, 7:27 p.m. Eastern time from San Antonio, Texas, where the number 1 seed Texas will take on Connecticut. And, of course, that is out of the South region. So those are your 4 early games coming up, 2 Thursday and 2 Friday night, as we move towards the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament.
Are you aware of this internet NCAA pool they have?
No, no. Here at the office?
No, on the internet.
No, I don't know anything about it, no.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't know. I know that in the office pool yesterday, I think I gave you some of the stories that include of 108 entries right now. Connie Fitzgerald from the promotions department is in first place.
Yeah.
And 4 spots from the bottom at 104 is John Minko, who is only 3 worse in the whole place right now than Minko for the college basketball pool. And a bunch of us are, actually Lou Ruffino is in like 5th. Right now, Lou's got a legitimate shot to win.
Actually.
You in 4th?
I think Chris told me 4.
Yeah, he's got a legitimate shot to win.
And where are you, Sid?
I'm somewhere in the 60 to 70 range.
Sid will be sitting in for, Lou will be sitting in for Sid. The Lou and Jody show.
Where's Francesa?
Francesa, I believe, out of the 100-plus applicants, is somewhere between 80 and 90.
I'll be sitting in for Francesa today.
Where are you, Bernie?
I'm somewhere in the 30s and 40s.
I've got to be down on the bottom, don't I, Sid?
You're not at the bottom, no. The very bottom, again, I think, is Steve Summers and John Minko. And Lori McNichol is second from the very bottom.
Right.
I don't even believe you're on the last page, which means you're not doing as badly as you may think you are. You know, it's a very weird tournament. There are people that are way ahead of both of us that only have 1 team left in their Final 4. I've got all 4 of my teams intact, yet I'm only somewhere near the middle of the pack.
Well, Donnie Imus he was leading the internet pool. So there's several thousand people in it.
Really?
And he's now, I think, third.
Good grief.
And he has 13 teams left in the Sweet 16.
Wow, 13 out of 16 is pretty good.
Yeah.
In fact, Connie, who's in first here at the WFAN pool, has got 14 out of 16.
But she must know something about this, right?
She's actually won this thing before.
Right.
Yeah, so she is, this is not a fluke. She's good.
Right.
She happens to be very good.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, last night you said that the women won, New Mexico won live from the pit in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They beat up Mississippi State.
Right.
Connecticut is still alive, like I said, and Tennessee is also still alive.
We're looking for the Lady Lobos to go all the way.
Well, that's just not going to happen.
No, I know it's not, but I'm just saying that's what we're looking for here.
Winter. It's a season of migration. The geese fly south. Whales head for warmer waters. And this year,
Consumer Credit Card. WIP reports every 20 minutes. This is John Minko, WFAN 20 Sports.
We've got another way for you to reach us. It's Fan Instant Access. Get us your comment or question by getting on the web at WFAN.com and click on Fan Instant Access. It's powered by The Fan, Sports Radio 66, WFAN New York.
The following conversation is real.
Every 20 minutes, this is John Minko, WFAN 20 Sports.
The 50,000-watt Clear Channel voice of Imus in the morning. Weekdays from 5:30 to 10 a.m. is The Fan. Sports Radio 66, WFAN, New York.
Hey, folks. Why, we're at war. You can't let an evil regime like this go with unconventional weapons of mass destruction and expect the world to be a safe place.
Imus in the morning.
how much is a good...
This is the Imus in the Morning radio program on WFAN New York. You got it?
Have it now?
No, because it was taken out of the control room, as a matter of fact.
I see.
But
here's Chuck for the news. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, I-Man. The fate of two journalists from the Long Island paper Newsday who've been covering the war in Iraq remains a mystery. Reporter Matt McAllister and photographer Moises Salman have not been heard from since Monday. The last time they were heard from was when they emailed their editors from the Palestine Hotel in Baghdad. Newsday editor Anthony Morrow said the two knew the dangers, but they felt a responsibility to be there.
They were arguing very strongly, very passionately that they wanted to stay.
Time, I would rerun both Dr. Bob Arnott and, or Arnaud, but I think it's Arnott.
I think it's Arnott.
And then Tom Friedman in the next hour of the program, and if there's some way to do that, or
boy, no kidding,
we may, and if not, we won't. But anyway, coming up in a minute, Jim Michalczewski.
Whoops, coughing fit.
And then Chip Reed with the 1st Marine Division, 3rd Battalion in South Central Iraq. But first, here's Charles with the latest on the war. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, I-Man. The U.S. Central Command's Brigadier General Vincent Brooks says the U.S.-led coalition remains with one primary...
I mean, I like Brit Hume, but I mean, Bill O'Reilly is revealing himself to just be an absolute, abject, ignorant asshole.
Whoa,
God,
no, wait a minute.
Awful reporting. Awful. They are awful.
Now, you say you're sorry.
I'm not sorry. I am not sorry. They are awful.
That's too much.
They are ignorant, stupid, and awful.
Wait.
They suck.
But what about the blank hole thing?
All right, I apologize for that.
Okay, that's what I want.
11 after the hour. Here's Charles with the war in Iraq. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, I-Man.
These kids are dying. The people are dying on both sides. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
And they're talking about their ratings and stuff. Just shut the F up.
Let me go ahead. Just knock a couple of things out for you here quickly, I-Man. At least one American is reported killed in the fighting near the southern Iraqi city of Al-Nasiriyah, and 2 other Marines are reported to have died when they were accidentally run over somehow by one of their own vehicles as they slept. The coalition's war toll right now, the confirmed dead, if you add this latest fellow who has been killed in combat, it would be 16 U.S. dead, accidents about 10, friendly fire 2 for a total of 25 or 26, depending on if these latest casualties are added into that count. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld is suggesting that U.S. forces bearing down on Baghdad might in fact lay siege to the capital and hope that anti-Saddam Hussein citizens rise up against the government before American troops actually have to go in and invade the city of 5 million people. Rumsfeld also said the United States and its battlefield allies would accept nothing short of total victory in Iraq. He said simply when he was appearing on Capitol Hill yesterday, and this is his quote, "There is not going to be a ceasefire." Certainly not insignificantly, the British assistance ship, the Sir Galahad, has now actually been able to dock and is tied up there at dockside in Qasr. Despite Baghdad's insistence that they still control the port, you'll have to tell the folks on the Sir Galahad who are now tied up there. Thousands of civilians trying to break out of Basra. Iraqi paramilitary forces fired on them to try to stop them. Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie McCourt says British forces are attacking the paramilitaries, trying to help the civilians, and the Britain's 7th Armored Brigade was trying to get in there to help care for those who are wounded. Latest we heard about that is that no one had actually been killed in that, but a number of people were wounded. Also, the New York Times reporting today that wiretaps and statements from Iraqi prisoners of war indicate that Iraqi officials have moved chemical weapons to the Medina division of the Republican Guard, which is dug in on the outskirts of Baghdad. American military officials said they're almost certain that Saddam Hussein will use those weapons on Allied troops when the assault on the capital begins. Army officials said they are monitoring the deployment of artillery pieces that could be used to fire shells filled with the chemicals, but they said those weapons may have been moved into hiding in the last week or so, further complicating that mission.
Of course, if he uses those chemical weapons, and if part of this grand plan of Saddam Hussein's is to ingratiate himself with the world community and the Arab and Muslim community, that'll be out the window.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it'll be, when we engage this Medina division, whenever that happens, and apparently it could happen between now and Monday. We'll talk to Jim Mikrosevsky from the Pentagon, see what he knows, and others, but that's going to be a crucial turning point in all of this. I mean, from just what little I know about what, I don't know anything about it, but what I hear and what I read, and
right.
as a result of the people who we talk to and your reports and so on.
Yep.
So, because it's worthwhile to remind everybody that we were all wringing our hands for, I don't know if I was not, but may have been, 4 days into Afghanistan about what a mess that was and what a quagmire that was going to be, and then overnight it changed. And the suspicion is, on the part of a lot of knowledgeable people, is that if we in fact engage a division like the Medina division and defeat them overwhelmingly, and that doesn't drag on for weeks, and the same with the Fedayeen, although according to the chip they aren't quite the force that we've been led to believe, but then there's varying reports about their strength and their impact throughout the country. But we'll discover then how badly they all want to fight the rest of them.
Oh yeah, particularly after having been warned for a long time, don't use those weapons.
Yeah, so because they could then
use those weapons at your own peril.
Anyway, 16 after the hour, and here's more Charles.
All right, I-Man, a couple of other things. Coalition forces have taken more than 4,000 prisoners of war so far. The U.S. commanders are expressing concern that some Iraqi soldiers allowed to return to their homes are being forced back into service by the Fedayeen Saddam, paramilitary units, these fanatical people loyal to Saddam. Brigadier General Brooks said that did happen in Basra, where soldiers from Iraq's 51st Mechanized Division were pressed back into combat duty after their surrender last week. We continue to get these stories of children being dragged from their homes and guns held to their heads in order to force the fathers, in order to protect their kids, to come back out and fight.
Well, here's the opening of that briefing from General Vincent Brooks from CENTCOM that happened just about an hour ago.
Let me give you an update on our operations. First, our direct attacks against the regime, its structures and its units are focused on communication systems, hiding places of the regime, and surface-to-surface missiles that continue to threaten coalition forces and neighboring countries. At this point,
A total of 12 missiles have been fired. We believe them to be in the Ababil 100 or Asamud family, and those have been launched from within Iraq toward Kuwait. We're seeing a rate of about 1 per day at this point, and all of the threatening launches have been intercepted by Patriot missiles. Additionally, we have established combat air patrols near the areas where most of the launches are occurring. We've been successful in destroying a number of launchers before and after they're fired, and we're actively hunting for them. Each attack like this against a military target removes one option from the regime. Our coalition special operations forces continue their actions throughout all of Iraq. A particularly effective operation occurred last night in Al-Nasiriyah involving special operations aircraft destroying 2 paramilitary headquarters. Our land component consolidated territory gained over the last several days and conducting a spring session with all kids from the Albuquerque area of New Mexico, and Deborah McClinton will be appearing tonight, Chuck, at the Camel Rock Casino. All right. Which is 10 minutes north of Santa Fe. And a portion of the proceeds are donated by those folks at the casino to the Imus-March here in actually Ribera, New Mexico. Oh, great. I'm in Reader's Digest, New Mexico. And Deborah will be out here tomorrow. Sid Rosenberg is in the studio. And congratulations, Sid, on the fine work in the Don Baylor promo. Oh, my God. Which Mark Chernoff has asked me not to play, and I'm honoring his wishes because I like him. Yeah. And he's a great program director.
He is. He's the best in the biz, no question about it.
He's one of the best I've ever worked for.
That's definitely.
Anyway, how are you doing? Pardon me?
You could just imagine how it went, so I don't have to play it for you.
No. Yeah. No, you don't. But I mean, can there be a bigger moron than you?
I don't know. I guess it's possible. I don't,
How would it be possible? Just briefly. Okay, let's go to the NCAA. Obviously, no answer for that. How'd the NCAA games go last night? Quickly, come on.
Both number 1 seeds won last night. In the Midwest, Kentucky had their problems. Lost their best player, Keith Bogans, with a sprained ankle. In fact, he may not even play on Saturday.
We don't need injury reports. We need scores.
They beat Wisconsin 63-57. The only upset last night had the 3-seed Marquette beating the 2-seed Pitt 77-74. That sets up a Kentucky-Marquette matchup tomorrow, And in the West region, Arizona blew out Notre Dame 88-71. Kansas got by Duke 69-65. Barely, exactly. And they had to get Collison go wild down the stretch to do it. Mm-hmm. So Arizona will play Kansas also tomorrow. So you've got your Final Four teams between the Midwest and the West regions. And then, of course, we still have 8 clubs playing tonight. In the South, Texas will play UConn. Maryland will play Michigan State. And in the East region, Oklahoma, Butler, and Syracuse, Auburn are your matchups.
You realize it's just a question of time, said before you lose your job. You are aware of that.
Oh, yeah, I'm absolutely aware of that. But it's just a matter of how long you think it's going to last.
It would be better if you would ask me before you do these things.
I was going to call you yesterday, but
if you're reluctant to ask Chernoff, just run these things by me.
Well, let me ask you an honest question.
All right.
In this time of war and all the work you've been doing to keep us updated, doing a fantastic job, if I had called you yesterday afternoon in New Mexico to review my promo for today's show with Jody Mack, what would your response have been?
I would have fired you 27 minutes down.
Get fast, people, get fast, get fast. Imus in the morning.
Tom Friedman were outstanding on this program this morning. So if we wanted to rerun both of them, we would have to not run any commercials. What would happen if, in support of our troops in Iraq, and regardless of where one was before we got into this, we're in it, if we were to suspend some of the commercials to rerun those, would they just get hysterical in the sales department or what?
Well, I think Chernoff would probably only just hang himself.
You would?
Yeah.
Well, we'll rerun one of them then. Here's Charles McCoy with the latest on the war in Iraq. Good morning, Charles.
The U.S. and Great Britain targeted Baghdad overnight heavily, in what some observers say was the most dramatic bombing campaign of the war, employing a couple of these bunker busters that are bigger than anything so far used, 4,700 pounds apiece, targeting communication systems, missiles, and hiding places. U.S. military leaders say Iraq may have told its forces to be ready to use chemical weapons at some point. U.S. Central Command's Brigadier General Vincent Brooks says the coalition has seen indications through
hero.
Yeah.
And as I said, to cultivate the sympathies of the world, If he uses chemical weapons, that just immediately goes out the window.
Certainly does.
And it certainly provides us with the opportunity to do whatever is necessary to wrap this thing up in about 24 hours.
You know it, yeah.
I just can't, well, who knows? But I mean, I just wanted to make that observation.
Yeah.
Even as they are, more from Chuck now.
The only thing is that he has used them in the past on his own people, of course, but U.S. military leaders say Iraq could be ready to do that, though. Brooks also says the coalition has seen indications through a variety of sources that perhaps those orders have been issued. He also discussed today the situation down to the south. There was certainly an encouraging development to see the British relief ship, the Sir Galahad, actually tying up dockside at Qasr and beginning to unload 200 tons of medicine and food supplies and water and all that sort of thing for the people who so desperately need it in the south of Iraq.
Well, speaking of everything here, it's coming up on 9 minutes after the hour. I hear now from the Pentagon for NBC News, Jim Kashevsky. Good morning, Jim. What's the latest from there?
Well, Don, we have a friendly fire incident to report this morning. Not on the battlefield, but in the briefing room. There are quotes today from the commander of the 5th Corps, essentially Lieutenant General William Wallace, who essentially is the forward guy who's running the war. I mean, he's got his troops squared off just across the line from those Republican Guard positions, and he told reporters that the U.S. supply lines are stretched too thin, that they really did, as we had mentioned earlier, underestimated the strength of these guerrilla hit-and-run tactics and the fact that they would even resort to those kinds of tactics. And then there are major questions being raised, again, about whether there are enough U.S. ground troops on the ground to not only take on the Republican Guards, they think they can do that, but then what do you do about Baghdad? And so when those quotes were thrown up to the briefer this morning,
General Brooks, yeah.
Yeah, General Brooks, Vince Brooks, who, by the way, is a 1-star, 2 stars below. He sort of brushed them off, talking about subordinates up there in the battlefield. So it's an example, on the face of it, well, that's no big deal, but it is. I mean, it's an example of the kind of tension that has already arisen within the ranks about what's going on out there on the battlefield, and the kind of miscalculations perhaps that were made by the war planners and by the civilians here in the Pentagon.
Well, it doesn't sound to me like the kind of information we want to be providing Saddam Hussein either, does it?
Well, probably not. But you know what? It's self-evident. I mean, all you have to do is look at what's going on out there. And there was a very interesting quote this morning from one of the Brits down at Basra, because a lot of those paramilitary types, the Fedayeen and the like, they are coming out of Basra in pickup trucks, waving guns, RPGs, and they're simply being destroyed from the air. As one of these generals said, it was suicidal. But the quote this morning from one of these generals said, I don't understand why they're doing this. And it reminded me, this may seem trite, but I think it's a good example of the movie Godfather 2. Michael Corleone in Havana sees this Cuban strapped with grenades kill himself to take out a couple of guys. Michael Corleone at that time knew instantly that the guerrillas were going to win that fight, and he pulled all his money out of Havana. Now, nobody thinks that these guys are going to win, but the Pentagon, you remember, Don, senior military leaders, senior civilian leaders, Dick Cheney himself told Tim on Meet the Press that this is going to be a very short fight. They're all going to give up as soon as we arrive. We're going to be welcomed with, roses and rose petals in the street, that kind of thing.
Daisies and rifle barrels, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just not happening. Now, the reason, according to some of these leaders here at the Pentagon, is that as long as Saddam Hussein wields any kind of control, people within the lower ranks of the military, and certainly many civilians who have been at the brunt of his brutal regime, borne the brunt, they're afraid to step forward. That makes sense, but you wonder just to what depth the opposition is willing to arise up against Saddam Hussein, and when.
Are you seeing a bunch of closed doors there in the hallways of the Pentagon?
I'm seeing more serious looks on people's faces.
So far the doors aren't shut. But the people now are walking through this building with seemingly even more purpose than they did before, a little quicker pace, harder to get to people than it was just within the past few days. There are problems on the battlefield. They realize that.
Is the plan to wait to engage the Republican Guard and these other folks until reinforcements arrive, or what?
I don't think so, because as of yesterday, the intelligence said that the Medina Division, for example, the most formidable of the Republican Guards, according to officials here, and probably the most likely to use chemical weapons, that their ability to fight has been degraded to almost 50%. Out of 300 tanks, it's believed they may now have approximately 150 left. And it's thought that once they got over that 50% mark, that they'd move. Because the last thing you want to do is allow them in any form or fashion to either regroup or to gain the high ground in terms of the public affairs or public relations war. The longer that Saddam Hussein or his regime is able to sit there in Baghdad and ride this out, as there are pictures of the conflict on the ground, reports now out of Basra that civilians already facing a humanitarian crisis are now being shot by some of these paramilitaries, and it's the feeling that Saddam Hussein's strategy is to let all this play out, the ugliness of war, that he sits there hunkered down in Baghdad long enough to ride that out, and then play to world sympathy, which will stand up and say, enough, let's bring an end to this. So in terms of taking on the Republican Guard, I still think we're probably going to see that within the next couple of days.
I'm talking with Jim Miklashevsky, NBC News, Pentagon. What's the deal with Richard Pearl? What's it all about?
Well, he was head of...
Another guy said this would be easy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you go back and look at the record, one of Richard Pearl's strategy was that you could put the military in on the ground, seize the outlying parts of Iraq, the oil fields certainly, and leave the cities alone. Do not be dragged into urban combat, and that they would establish routes for the civilians to evacuate Baghdad, and just let the Iraqi leadership fester inside Baghdad until they say until they cry uncle. But that apparent strategy does not appear to be working. And then and I haven't really paid much attention to this, but there have been stories that he may or may not have had a conflict of interest in terms of business dealings. I don't know anything about that, but I think the administration felt they were under a lot of pressure to disassociate themselves from Pearl, and Pearl said he took it on his own, so to resign from the Defense Policy Board. But he was essentially the top civilian advisor outside the government to Donald Rumsfeld and the rest of the crowd here, and that was his strategy all along, that the Iraqi military would fold very quickly once the shooting started.
Apparently he's been hired by the telecommunications company Global Crossing, which is in bankruptcy, to provide them with some advice. They may want to rethink that, considering the advice he's given us. So.
I don't know anything about that, Don.
Yeah.
Nice try.
Well, no, I'm not trying to suck you into anything.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm just my observation. No, I'm just a fact.
Oh, this wasn't one of your usual ambushes.
No, it's too serious a situation to screw around. These bunker busters over Baghdad, do we know what damage they did?
They went after apparently went after one of Saddam's primary palaces there in Baghdad. One or two of these 5,000-pounders, deep penetrators designed to go very deep into these extremely hardened bunkers. And depending on what kind of fuse it had, these are remarkable weapons, actually. They actually, as they go through, they count the number of floors they go through before the charge blows. But when we looked up yesterday and saw those pictures, our first impression was it was one of those Moabs, one of those 21,000-pounders that they've got. They got a couple of those experimental in the inventory, but it turned out that there were one, maybe two of those 5,000-pounders that set up a huge mushroom cloud of dust, mushroom cloud over Baghdad.
may have said, but just so I understand, when do we anticipate that we'll engage the Medina Division?
Probably if the plans are still on track, and they've already been knocked off track several times, and then, you know, the generals have to hop off and right this convoy and get it back on, and then head down the road. But probably within the next day or two, we're likely to see some movement against the Republican Guards. I tell you, Don, if you don't see it by the end of this weekend, come Monday when we're talking, this military plan, not the military itself, but this military plan will be in serious trouble.
Of course, again, just my observation, but it would seem reasonable to me that any plan they had would have to be flexible.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, I mean, for anybody to be astonished that they've had to make some sort of readjustment and changes is
Here's
puzzling.
Here's the problem, though. That early in the plan, it was the idea that the Saddam regime and his military would fold quickly. So it was the argument from the civilian leadership in this building that, therefore, you do not need large numbers of ground troops to back you up in case it goes wrong. Everybody was so convinced that this would be over in a hurry that you don't need the large numbers. Well, as of last night, for example, they're plucking 2,000 Marines out of the war on terrorism. They were stationed at the Horn of Africa, and they're being sent on an emergency basis to Basra to back up the Brits. 3,000 of the 2nd Armored Cavalry out of Fort Polk. Whenever they're deployed, they always go with their armor. They take their time, 2-3 weeks. They're flying them over. They want them there in a hurry to back up those supply lines, 200 miles. And as General Wallace says, he thinks that supply line is stretched too thin and vulnerable. 30,000 of the Army's 4th Infantry Division. Now, they should already be in there, actually, but Turkey, you know, stuck it to the U.S. and wouldn't allow them to go through Turkey. So their pace is going to be accelerated a little bit, but they're not going to be able to get into the fight for 2 or 3 weeks because their first supply ship doesn't arrive until Sunday. And 30,000 strong, it's going to take a while before you see them on the battlefield. Nobody in the building or even in the U.S. military who has complaints thinks that the U.S. military will not prevail here. It's just that it could take longer, and the longer it goes, you raise the risk to those troops. And there are some very reasonable and credible former U.S. military officials who are now shaking their heads saying, look, you know, you should have had those guys in there from the very get-go, and you wouldn't be in this problem right now.
I want you to stay strong, though, Jim.
Oh, I'm strong.
I don't want you to get, don't get wobbly on us here.
No. Here, as Margaret Thatcher told Bush 41, don't go wobbly on us.
Yeah, don't go wobbly on us here, Jim. And then, by the way, there'll be plenty of time to screw around with you when this war's over, so you can get.
Well, you know, I can take it.
So you can get off the phone with me and get on the phone with Russert and Brokaw and explain just exactly what the hell you meant by that.
Listen, but I remember full well 4 or 5 days into Afghanistan against a military, the Taliban, that had no military power. People were talking quagmire. So it is not unusual to see the second guessers jump up to the front here and raise questions. But when you have the primary military commander, Lieutenant General William Wallace, raising these questions publicly in the heat of battle, you know that there are serious problems.
Not good. As always, Jim, thank you very much. Jim Miklashevsky, NBC News. The Pentagon is 22 after the hour. Well, we don't want Jim getting wobbly on us.
No, we don't. No, we don't. No.
We got to stay strong, and we'll kill the son of a bitches, and it'll be over. So it's unfortunate that it had to come to that, but it has come to that.
I don't think he's getting wobbly, but...
No, I don't either.
I think he is just...
No, he's reporting the news.
Exactly, and I mean, I take that certainly as what he says when William Wallace starts raising questions in the press. I mean, he's running the thing. That's, I don't know.
And as that nitwit General Brooks, 2 stars below him, dismissed him as a subordinate, but he'll hear about that, won't he?
I would
suspect.
I would suspect.
22 after the hour.
Hey, Imus in the morning.
Another lending success story from LendingTree.com.
I'm way too busy to get a line of credit.
Painted Bob Schieffer for sandbagging Rumsfeld with pictures of POWs and for showing these pictures on the air before their families have been notified. Did that happen?
I don't know, man.
Imus, what a great report from Dr. Bob Arnott. Okay. Attention all protesters, flights leave daily for other countries. Go now, leave for peace-loving nation that will become a victim. like you, do not return. That means Iraq is going to become our West Bank and Gaza Strip. We'll win this war, occupy the area, and deal with the population who will try to kill us. Well, okay. I man, arrogance loses war, and Rumsfeld is one arrogant son of a bitch. Did you see Charles Rangel on Fox last night accusing the president and the American military of bombing women and children in Iraq? This guy should be shot. Well, I don't agree with that. Excellent observation regarding Bill O'Reilly. I mean, that happened a number of hours ago. Bob Arnott from the front coming up 30 minutes after the hour.
If you're one of the millions of Americans,
God bless America.
Great.
Sid's in the studio, and
picture of Sid would work just as well.
New York Jew.
Hey, look at this New York Jew there, Arabia.
Last night, apparently, Kentucky defeated Wisconsin, Marquette over Pittsburgh. Is that right?
That's exactly right, man. And
any information on who's leading the pool?
No, they're actually calculating the numbers as we speak. We'll have that back when you get back after the weekend. But they are calculating it as we speak.
Speaking of the Internet, you can go to WFAN.com and hear the Tom Friedman interview that we conducted earlier this morning on the Imus Morning program. Good. Arizona beat Notre Dame. Kansas over Duke tonight. Oklahoma takes on Minko's Butler team.
Yes.
Butler, what do they call?
What do you mean? What's the nickname of their club?
Yeah, the Butler Buttheads, what?
Bulldogs, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Minko's actually made the trip to Albany, by the way, man. He's going to be out there tonight watching the game.
God. Syracuse, because Minko, of course, unaware that it's on television. But Syracuse at Auburn.
Almighty.
Connecticut takes on Texas, Maryland, and Michigan State. God, what a dope.
And those are your matchups. That's exactly right. And remember now, both number one seeds, Arizona and Kentucky, made it out last night. Arizona, no problem. Kentucky, barely. So we'll see what happens with the two number one seeds playing tonight, Texas in the south and Oklahoma, man, playing in the east.
Well, I did tell Frances at the beginning of all of this that Kentucky would not win the national championship.
You did say that. And, and again, Bogans got hurt last night, so that matchup against Marquette could be very sticky for Kentucky on Saturday, so you may be right.
So, man, looking pretty good, huh?
Listen, you always look good.
Yeah. Of course, I had Xavier winning the national championship.
Yeah.
And
you look great.
That probably won't be happening, will it?
Listen, that's a gutsy pick. Don't hold that against yourself. That's a gutsy pick.
All right, 8 minutes till the hour here on the Imus in the Morning program. Well, this was a great show, you guys.
Yeah.
So I'll see you all on Monday.
Okay, doke.
Get out.
Well,
you get out.
Imus in the morning.
I've worked with a lot of coaches about the war plan. We think we know in the media. We don't know anything. But all he has to do is acknowledge that maybe the level of expectation was allowed to get a bit too high. But that our mission, and then you continue on with what they are saying. I mean, he gets so pissed off that you begin to think, well, what's really going on? If he's this angry, what's he hiding here?
Well, that's a good point, because, I don't have any problem with them having to go to Plan B or Plan C. I mean, it's a war.
It's a war. The job's going to get done. It could get done this week. It could get done next month. We don't know. We just don't know.
But I wonder if, as they did somewhat in Vietnam, it's probably not a good analogy, but it'll maybe work. But in this effort, not that they shouldn't, but I don't want to suggest that I think that to kill women and children. I don't think that to kill anybody. But it's a war, and then you have to move past that. But will this attempt to try to save the cities and prevent civilian casualties wind up killing more Americans? Probably will, won't it?
Well, I think that's when the rubber's going to hit the road. I mean, 35 years ago this spring, the Marine Corps did the city of Hue in Vietnam. Beautiful city, runs along the Perfume River. You look across the river, there's a place on one side of the river called the Circle Sportif, which is where the American forces had set up, the Marines had set up. There's two beautiful bridges leading across to this old imperial city within a walled citadel. And the orders were not to destroy, if you could help it, not to destroy the citadel because of its religious symbolism, its historical significance. And the Marines took an incredible beating crossing those bridges and capturing that city in February of 1968. And any house-to-house fighting, no matter the technology, no matter the sophistication of our weapon systems, house-to-house will be brutal. But we don't know that we'll get to that point. I mean, we could well be, if they knock out a couple of these armored divisions within and around Baghdad, we could well be out of this thing much sooner than anybody thinks. It's only been 12 or 13 days yet. What angers me is the Pentagon and even the president, they've yet to acknowledge the fact that they had a whole lot riding on Turkey, allowing us to start a pincer movement from the north.
Should have been able to solve that, I would think.
Yeah, that's bothersome that they couldn't get that done. They couldn't get the UN thing done. Fine, okay, the UN is a bunch of stooges. We're going to write that off. But Turkey, come on. We should have been able to do that. And they're on the record. General Myers is on the record repeatedly as saying, well, it's not really no big deal. There are other ways to do it. What other ways? Well, they haven't found another way.
It might be helpful, too, if Secretary Rumsfeld and General Powell, Secretary Powell, would put off warning Syria and Iran about what they're going to do until we finish with Iraq.
Yeah, it's like, you got to take care of Charles before you take on Bernie and Lou, you know? I mean, Charles is right there in the room with you. You got to beat him up, before Bernie and Lou get to you.
Right.
One thing at a time.
That could be a problem, by the way. It takes some time.
Charles would whip your ass.
It would take more than a few days, or months, or years. So, but what do you think? Is there? Here's a phrase from Vietnam. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I do.
I don't think it's funny. Believe me, I don't.
I do. I am not a pessimist here. I'm not a cynic when it comes to the capabilities, the courage of our people on the ground. We will get this done. It's just that we sit here, and I believe Joe Klein alluded to this when he was on. I heard him about an hour or so ago. I mean, our entire frame of reference, or most of it as a country now, is an appliance, a TV set. That's an appliance. It's in your house, and we watch it as if we expect truth and happy endings and everything to spill from it. We're going to come to an end here. We're going to defeat this particular enemy. We're going to move on. Now, it might not happen in 14 days, might not happen in 3 weeks, but it's going to happen. Sit there, watch it, read your history books, read about past wars, read about your country, read about who we really are. We're not attackers. We're not invaders. We're a great nation, great people, there for the best of the most noble purposes. Be patient. It'll happen.
I know.
For Christ's sakes.
I know poor old Senator Moynihan passed away.
Oh, what a great guy. Darn, when he was at Harvard, when he left the Nixon administration and went back to New York and ran for the United States Senate, I used to have breakfast with him a couple of times a week at this old place in Harvard Square, the Worst House. And we'd go in there, and poor Pat, I'm telling you, there were many a Monday morning when poor Pat would have a beer for breakfast. But he was a terrific guy, a smart guy, a guy who, in the mid-1960s, wrote a memo to the President of the United States, then President Nixon, President Richard Nixon, outlining the grief and the tragedy, the social tragedy, the cultural tragedy that could well be the black family. This was in the late 1960s. And he was maligned and accused of being a racist for years because he used the phrase benign neglect in this memo. And yet Pat Moynihan brought more to the table intellectually on his worst day in the United States Senate, unfortunately, than I think we see in the combined intellect of the Senate today on their best day.
I just wondered, did Senator Kerry and Senator Daschle also die or resign? I haven't heard from them.
Boy, Tom Daschle, he went to the Black Hills and stayed there after his comment, didn't he?
Oh. Where's Senator Kerry been?
He's around. I think he's doing the right thing. He doesn't want to get in the middle of this. He doesn't want to be out there campaigning and making statements criticizing everybody in the middle of this. He's been in the middle of it for real. He knows what the real deal is. He's the only guy running for the presidency of the United States who's ever been shot at, that we know of. He's the only guy running for the presidency of the United States who's ever held a weapon in his hands in anger and self-defense. He's the only guy running for president of the United States who knows the sound of a rocket-propelled grenade hitting about 15 yards from you. He knows what it sounds like, what it feels like, what it looks like, and what it feels like to bury someone out there in the field, what it feels like to stand up in Lowell, Massachusetts, as I saw him do about 3 years ago, and give the eulogy for a guy, a plumber, by the name of Tommy Bilodeau, who was his crew chief on his PT boat out there in the Mekong River Delta, and bury the guy. After having lived with the guy and nearly died with the guy in Vietnam, he knows what that's like. So he's not going to be going around the country, cheap-shotting the President of the United States or cheap-shotting what we're doing over there or trying to do in Iraq. No matter how you feel about it one way or another, he's not going to be doing that.
Do we win the hearts and minds of these people in Iraq, or do we have to, or do we just...
No, they can have their own hearts and minds. We just got to do what we got to do, get Saddam Hussein and get out of there. And leave them with their own heart. Listen, it might well end up, Don, if you look at history, it might well end up that they are accorded,
the leadership of another, nearly horrible dictator. I mean, but that's none of our business. If you look at these various countries, the strong rise to the top. The cruel often rise to the top, through blunt force. That's the way some of these societies are. We can't do it. We can try to change it, I assume. And I assume we will, but it might not work out.